Think about the image of power, the way we collectively perceive those at the very pinnacle of the global hierarchy. We expect a certain level of invincibility, don't we? We want to believe that the systems surrounding our leaders are impenetrable and that the leaders themselves are unshakable. But what happens when that image cracks right in front of the world? I've been analyzing the recent footage from that 60 Minutes interview and the surrounding events in Washington, and it's frankly haunting. It isn't just about a single security breach or a heated exchange. It's about a fundamental shift in the vulnerability of the entire American political system. We saw a moment this week that felt like it belonged in a different, more volatile century, yet it played out on modern high-definition screens for everyone to dissect. It was a night that should have been defined by the glamour of the White House Correspondents Dinner, a night of prestige and the celebration of the First Amendment. Instead, the atmosphere shifted in a heartbeat from high society celebration to pure, unadulterated chaos. I have to ask myself, is this the new baseline for our political reality? I suspect it might be. This isn't just a news story, it's a diagnostic report on a nation that is struggling to maintain its own internal stability. To understand where we are, we have to look at the atmosphere in DC when everything started to go down. The sources tell us that events were totally changed because of what happened. The energy in the city transformed overnight from anticipation to a state of high alert. Imagine being in that ballroom, hearing the normal noise of a gala, and then realizing that something is fundamentally wrong. Donald Trump was there, and the resulting interview with Norah O'Donnell has provided us with some of the most shocking insights into his psyche and the current state of presidential security that we've seen in years. It was a situation that took even seasoned observers by surprise, something truly crazy in the most literal sense of the word. So what really happened during those chaotic seconds when the alarms went off? There is this specific piece of footage that everyone is talking about, the moment where it looks like Trump falls or stumbles. Now, if you listen to his explanation, he denies it entirely. He claims he wanted to see what was happening, that he wasn't making it easy for the agents because he wanted to understand the situation. He says he was told to go down by the Secret Service and that he was essentially walking out pretty tall but just slightly bent over to avoid being a target. But if you watch the tape, well, the physical reality seems to tell a much more human story of a man losing his balance under pressure. Does it actually make sense for a leader to fight the footage of his own physical stumbles so hard? For a strategist, the answer is simpler than it looks. It's about the Superman complex. Trump wants to be seen as invincible, as a figure who is physically dominant and never shows a moment of weakness. To admit to a fall is to admit to being vulnerable, and in the world of geopolitical branding, vulnerability is a liability he cannot afford. So we see this fascinating psychological battle where he tries to rewrite a physical event into a tactical choice. It's a reminder that for some leaders, the image of power is often more important than the reality of the situation itself. Then we have the details of the shooter, this individual who managed to cut through a world-class security perimeter as if it weren't even there. Trump described the gunman as a blur, someone who moved with such incredible speed that he joked the NFL should sign him up. Think about the gravity of that statement for a moment. We are talking about a person running 45 yards, popping through metal detectors, and firing rounds while the entire area was supposed to be swarming with elite security. How does a person get that close to the most protected individuals in the country? It's a question that should keep every security expert in the world awake at night. The shooter's own words, left behind in a manifesto, add a chilling layer to this failure. He actually wrote about his surprise at the lack of security, mocking the Secret Service for their insane level of incompetence. He expected cameras at every bend, bugged rooms, and armed agents every 10 feet. Instead, he found what he described as nothing. This is where things could escalate, because if the perception of the Secret Service shifts from invincible to incompetent, the deterrent effect of their presence vanishes, and if this continues, the consequences for future presidents and the stability of the executive branch will be serious. Why would the security detail be so flat-footed in such a high-stakes environment? Well, maybe we're seeing a system that has become complacent, or perhaps the threats are simply evolving faster than the protocols. Trump, for his part, defended the agents, saying they did a good job despite the fact that someone almost shot him. It's a strange contradiction, isn't it? He calls the shooter incompetent because he got caught, while simultaneously acknowledging that the shooter moved like a professional athlete through a supposedly secure zone. It's as if he's trying to preserve the dignity of the institution of the Secret Service while the facts on the ground are screaming that something went terribly wrong. But the most explosive part of this entire saga was the exchange regarding the shooter's motives. Norah O'Donnell brought up the manifesto, a document that reportedly stated that administration officials were targets. But then she read a specific line from the shooter: "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." Before she could even finish the sentence, before she could even imply who the shooter was referring to, Trump jumped in to defend himself. He immediately denied being a rapist or a pedophile, lashing out at the reporter for even reading the words. So what's really happening here? Why the immediate visceral denial to a quote that didn't even mention him by name? The reporter clocked him on it instantly, pointing out that he was the one who associated those labels with himself. It was a stunning moment of psychological transparency. Trump called the reporter a disgrace and a horrible person, claiming he was totally exonerated from any association with people like Epstein. But the damage to the narrative was already done. By reacting so defensively to a general statement in a manifesto, he inadvertently centered himself in the shooter's dark fantasy. This brings us to a larger, more troubling question: what is the temperature of the country right now? During that same dinner, the room was filled with people whose lives have been defined by political violence. You had Arfaisi JRB and his sister, people who witnessed the assassinations of their father and uncle. You had Steve Scalise, who survived a mass shooting at a congressional baseball practice. These aren't just names in a history book, they are living reminders that in America, the line between political disagreement and physical harm is paper thin. When asked what he could do to change this trajectory, Trump's response was deeply cynical. He basically said that this violence is nothing new, that it's been happening for 500 years and will likely continue. He didn't offer a vision for unity. Instead, he turned the blame toward the hate speech of the Democrats. He argued that their rhetoric is what's truly dangerous to the country. This is where we see the strategic shift in real time, the refusal to take responsibility for the national climate and the decision to use a moment of violence as a political cudgel. If the leadership of the country views political violence as an inevitable historical constant, then we have to ask ourselves if there is any hope of de-escalation. The reality is that we are watching a leader who is more concerned with his image of Superman than the systemic failures that allowed a gunman to get within 45 yards of him. He is more concerned with attacking a journalist for reading a manifesto than addressing the underlying motives that drive such sick people to act. It's a defensive crouch that might work for a political base, but from a geopolitical standpoint, it signals a nation in deep internal distress. When the world looks at the United States, they see a country where even the president isn't sure if the Secret Service can keep a location secure. What does this mean for the future of global stability? If the American executive branch is viewed as vulnerable, both physically and psychologically, it changes the way other nations interact with us. Our allies might feel less secure, and our adversaries might feel more emboldened. A president who is distracted by fact-checking a stumble or arguing about a manifesto is a president who is not focused on the broader strategic challenges facing the world. This isn't just a domestic conflict, it's a signal of American volatility that resonates across every ocean. So in my view, if you look at the bigger picture, this isn't just a single shocking interview or a failed assassination attempt. This is a strategic shift toward a more fractured and dangerous political environment. We are entering an era where the invincibility of the president is a myth that can no longer be sustained. The blur of the shooter, the stumble on the tape, the defensive outbursts in the interview. These are all symptoms of a system under extreme pressure. If we don't find a way to lower the temperature and rebuild the integrity of our security and our discourse, we are looking at a very dark trajectory indeed. Ultimately, we have to decide if we want a political system built on the image of Superman or a system built on the reality of accountability and safety. Right now, it feels like we are choosing the image, and that is a very dangerous game to play. The manifesto author was right about one thing: the level of incompetence we are. Seeing is truly insane, but the incompetence isn't just in the security detail, it's in our collective inability to stop the cycle of hate and violence before it reaches the ballroom floor. This is the reality we have to face, and it's a reality that requires much more than just a quick denial on 60 Minutes.